And welcome back to Steeler Thoughts and Chief Feelings, episode 32. Now, this is your co host, Chris. I'm the philosophy professor and Steelers fan here.
And I'm Ajay. I'm the psychiatrist and Chiefs fan here. Thanks to all of you who follow along here on the YouTube channel. If you get the podcast audio version wherever you download podcasts, or if you follow us at STCF715 on TikTok, Twitter, or Instagram. This week's comment of the week comes from the YouTube channel. Right here, was on a video I posted with examining what the Chiefs pass rush did to be so effective against the Browns. So I think the title of the video was, "How did the Chiefs pass rush generate so much pressure against Cleveland?" And our comment comes from Ben Burnett 8109. "There is nothing, all caps nothing. There is nothing complicated about this. The Browns are not a good football team. Looky there. I just saved you nearly 45 minutes of nonsense." And that's the comment of the week.
Fair, I guess. They're not that, they're 3 and what, 11 now? 10?
I think that's right. I think they're 3-11.
Yeah. Uh, but we didn't get that much pressure in the first game against them. So you have to do some things to get pressure, no matter who you're playing in the NFL.
And we did some things. I think we'll talk about this when we actually break the game down, but I'm pretty encouraged by the Chiefs pass rush. I'm hoping this will continue.
Yeah, that's 2 straight weeks now. It's been pretty good, right? After
Yeah.
a lull for a while.
And it's no coincidence that those are the 2 weeks that we've had Charles Omenu. I think that's been a
Yeah,
big part of it.
yeah. Again, get the someone aside from Jones that's actually getting pressure, which really opens things up for them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, the other thing from last week that I think I need to follow up on before we get real into it is the word gauntlet, which we had talked about the Steelers facing a gauntlet and then wondered where that came from because it has something to do with the glove. So I have the answer, which, anyone could just look up this answer. This is not like I have secret access to anything here, but yes. So there's a French word which I'm going to pronounce incorrectly, gantelet, gantelet. I don't know, which is a diminutive of gaunt, meaning glove, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong too because it's French. Um, but apparently, there's two different sort of histories here about where the phrase came from, right? So there's like the throw down the gauntlet or pick up the gauntlet. Those are related to medieval dueling practices. Like if a knight wanted to
Oh.
challenge another knight to like jousting or something, they would throw down the gauntlet, and then my dog is snoring at my feet. I don't know if you can hear. They would throw down the gauntlet, and then the other one, if they wanted to accept the challenge, would pick it up. And I guess that was now we're
Oh.
jousting.
Throw down the
But
gun.
the term like gauntlet used as an ordeal, a severe trial, comes from I think Swedish. Was that right? Yeah, Swedish. Which apparently it's derived from the Swedish word gata, meaning lane or way. Which I'm not quite sure why that equates to a severe trial or ordeal, but there you have it, right? So the gauntlet the Steelers are facing is from Sweden, as it were. Um,
Interesting. Man,
yeah,
that would have been really fitting if you were playing the Vikings. It would have been
yeah,
a
it
gauntlet
would
from
be.
Sweden. Yeah.
Um, Alas, some things don't line perfectly. Um, Anything else that we need to talk about before getting into these games, which were both interesting in very different ways, I think, from last week.
I don't think so. I feel like I don't remember that there was anything else to follow up on. Why
Okay.
don't we get into do you want to get into the Chiefs game first?
Yeah, it happened first, and it was happier, so we'll talk about that one first. Well, I don't know
You
if it was
wouldn't know
happier. Were
that
you
hearing
happy
what
about it?
Chiefs.
Yeah.
I am but I feel like Chiefs Kingdom in general was pretty negative. I mean, they've been negative for a little while though. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm curious to get. So, obviously, like the biggest news was the Mahomes injury. But so it's a high ankle sprain is like the worst part of it, right? And it sounds like he's gonna play this week.
Yeah, it's a high ankle sprain. It sounds like it's not as bad as the one he suffered against the Jaguars in the playoffs a couple years ago. And he's been practicing fully. I'll tell you one thing, like I don't gamble, but when I heard like that the line came out that the Chiefs were underdogs by 2.5 points immediately after the
Oh, they.
Browns game,
Oh, wow.
they were assuming Mahomes wasn't going to play. Like if I gambled, I would have bet so much on the Chiefs plus 2.5 because I would have guaranteed you, like if you put a gun to my head, I would have told you Mahomes is playing on Saturday. At this point, it's just like people that look at the Chiefs during the regular season and assume they're not going to play well in the playoffs. Like until Mahomes has an ankle injury and actually doesn't play, like let's not assume he's not going to play. Like he figures it
Yeah.
out. I don't know what he has in his ankle joint that makes it recover so quickly, but my guess is honestly, I think he must be very, very flexible. And so, like, when he has these kinds of injuries, it doesn't like cause that inflammation that like tearing a brittle ligament would do. It's if you have a really bendy ligament, then the actual microscopic tears are fewer and fewer. And so there's not as much that has to heal.
Yeah. I feel like he's had this enough, like several times. Maybe I'm inflating how many times, but every time he seems to come back and play like perfectly well on a high ankle sprain, which is I cannot imagine an easy thing to do, at least for most people. But um, yeah, so I guess a couple things, like a couple highlights from this game. But I mean, you feel free to sort of just take it away however you want. But I mean, you got six turnovers, which is nice. Uh, I think, I mean, it did seem like Mahomes struggled, where the passing game in general struggled a bit. I think he was like 19 for 38 or something. Um, do you know why they passed it so much? I mean, it seems like they had a lead. Why not just lean on the running game at that point? Those are
Well,
my main perplexities or questions at this point.
well, that so in the first half, I feel like the offense didn't look terrible. The weird thing was when it didn't go well, it was like Mahomes missed a couple throws and made a couple bad decisions, which was uncharacteristic. Like we had like a crossing mesh route, which was clearly set up to get Xavier Worthy open, and he was open, not like wide open, but he was there, and he would have gotten a first down on a third down. And Mahomes launched a ball into double coverage to Justin Watson, who then had to commit offensive pass interference to prevent an interception. Like it was very weird. I'm not sure what was going on, and he missed Worthy on another throw. That Worthy was open, and oftentimes I do a lot of like, well, we don't know like how Worthy came out of the break. Like maybe Mahomes thought he was going to break up, and but the way the defenders were positioned, this one made no sense for Mahomes to throw where he did. I don't. He anyway, like, but the offense was still okay. Like up until about like 13 minutes to go in the third quarter, we were up 21-0, and that's when kind of the wheels fell off for the Chiefs offense. And I think it was a combination of things. Like the next drive was the one where Mahomes essentially completed a bomb to DeAndre Hopkins, who like wasn't able to complete the process to the ground, and the ball popped up in the air, and then he caught it, and then on replay it turns out that the nose of the ball like barely hit the ground, so it was incomplete. Like we complete that pass, then we have first and goal at like the 4 yard line.
Mhm.
So there were plays like that. Myles Garrett started playing a lot better in the second half. Like he wrecked a couple plays, and the Browns
Did you
were
see
really
what was the thing with his eye? It looked like there was, but then there was like nothing that came of that. He came back in the game, no bandage on his eye or anything. Was that
I
just an act? Like that's what I wondered,
I
honestly.
mean, this is probably the wrong podcast to discuss this because I don't think either of us are like huge Miles Garrett fans. But like the what was funny is I was watching with my wife, and I one of the things I said, and this is just going to come off as like so much more negative than I intended to, but I was just like, I have always known Miles Garrett to be like a somewhat dramatic individual, and like the degree to which he was flailing, like I thought like, man, he must have like a corneal abrasion, like it must have scratched something serious. Like I just cannot believe that something was that bad and had no consequence to your eye whatsoever. I don't
Mm,
understand what could have possibly, unless there was something stuck in his eye. But like we've all had something in our eye, right? We're not like flailing on the ground. Like yes, it's
right,
uncomfortable, but you're just like God, like he was like the way he was flailing. I was like, is something impaling his eye? Is because eye injuries are no joke. Like if something actually hurt your eye, it's not like you're just going to show up, a couple drives later and start playing again.
right. Yeah,
So yeah, and it was weird because we didn't get a really good replay angle showing Tooney actually. The
yeah.
closest thing I could see was that the strap that goes down to your chin strap across. It looks like Tooney brushed that, and I wonder if like the edge of that got to his eye because
Like
I
I wonder
didn't
if
see
there's
like
is there tension on it? Like if it snapped in or something, then could have hit it. I
yeah.
don't know.
But again, like he was flailing after he took his helmet off. I,
Hmm.
listen, I feel like this is the second time on this podcast that I'm coming across as like questioning the toughness of an NFL player, which is a stupid thing to do in my opinion. But at the same time, like I don't know what to tell you. Like everyone's had something in their eye that ended up being nothing, and I have never seen anyone react like that. So
Yeah,
I don't know what to I don't know what to make of that.
it is it's a very. I mean, and there's no way. I mean, even if it was like the logic of faking that is a little unclear because you would not know that there wouldn't be a camera angle to get it, right? And it just so happened that the camera did not get it because there was like a helmet in front or something like that, so you couldn't actually see. Geez, my dog is really snoring right now. But you couldn't actually see the contact, right? So it was like a little, but like there's no like if he's faking it, how does he know that no one could see that actually nothing happened there? So I don't know. The whole thing is very confusing.
I mean, unless like the goal was to try to get a flag, like I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
like, but I don't know. Listen, I feel like the thoughts that I have, the speculation that I have, are probably not good to put on a public forum. like,
That's
like,
fair. But then one can infer some of Ajay's speculation from that comment alone,
yeah.
right? But we'll leave you to infer it. Okay. Okay. So back to the Chiefs side of things. Uh, so he came on stronger in the second half, and that is part of what slowed you down. You think?
Yeah, I mean, he played really well in the second half. And also, the Browns were certainly gearing up against the run. Like, I actually wrote this down because so many Chiefs fans were complaining about the lack of running the ball. Let me see. So there were five meaningful drives in the second half that after the Chiefs scored to go up 21 nothing, that the fifth drive culminated with the Mahomes injury. So then Carson Wentz took on from there. So the first drive was a 3 and out, and that had one run for 0 yards. The second drive, they got one first down and then punted, and that they had two runs on that drive for a total of -1 yard. So the next two drives are the ones that I feel like people really complained about. There was two straight 3 and outs with no runs, but there were 7 or 8 in the box on every play except the third and long. Um, 8 in the box on first down. And then the fifth drive was a 10 play, 41-yard drive in which they had three runs for 5 yards. So over the course of those five drives, they had six runs for a total of 4 yards. So,
Yeah.
like I'm not saying they couldn't have run the ball more. I think that's a reasonable opinion to have, but like if I don't understand the Chiefs fans that are like, it's unreasonable how little they ran the ball. I don't think it's unreasonable. I think that they ran the ball six times and got 4 yards. Like you'd stop running the ball too. I know I would. like
Yeah.
it.
Or at least stop doing straightforward running plays. Maybe
Yeah.
throw in some misdirection pre-snap or something.
Yeah. Or like if you want a screen pass or something, I get it. But then we also have like a left tackle that is not used to playing left tackle and a new left guard. So maybe things like the screen game are a little too, because we know that Andy Reid is very particular about his screen game. You have to hit this spot, you have to have this timing. Like maybe he didn't feel like the precision was there with the new makeshift offensive line.
Yeah. Speaking of which, though, it was Tooney starting at left tackle in this one, right? Is that what you think that was just because of Miles Garrett and trying to have a veteran presence against him, or what was the? Do you think that'll continue?
I think it depends on Wanye Morris's health. I don't think Wanye is healthy. I think a healthy Wanye Morris starts that game. I think they've given up on Kingsley for this year. This year, they're just going to wait and see, and we'll try again next year with another off season. Ultimately, it'll be DJ Humphries, and my reading is that this is probably like DJ Humphries isn't playing this game against the Texans, and I think it's probably not against the Steelers, but he might. I think that might be the time where they try to fit him in, and then he gets a 10-day rest after that. So, um, but yeah, the long term is going to be DJ Humphries. It's just about when his hamstring comes back. But I don't think they want Tooney out there. It's just that I don't think they feel like Wanye is healthy enough right now to make it happen.
Okay, so it's probably Tooney again this week, and then maybe Humphrey. I mean, that's like a
Yeah.
4-day turnaround before they play the Steelers. So yeah, all right.
Might be a good time to
What?
put Humphries in. It's like we can't have a complicated game plan anyway. It's just like just
That's
come
true.
in.
That's true. So what else from this game do you want to highlight? I mean, the 6 turnovers is nice. I don't think the Chiefs have been getting a ton of turnovers this
No,
year.
we had 10 in our first 12 games. So to get
That's not a
six in
ton.
the
Yeah.
13th game is really something.
Yeah. Do you attribute that to something the Chiefs were doing, or was it the Browns being, inept, or Jameis Winston, giveth and taketh?
I think there was a combination. I would say at least two of the Chiefs' interceptions were like good defensive plays. The McDuffie pick, he finally got one after,
Yeah.
like, he had an all-pro season and has had zero career interceptions. He finally
Yeah,
got his first.
I thought that must have meant on the year or something like that when I heard it was his first pick, but apparently, yeah.
And then the Bolton pick was awesome. Like that was,
Oh yeah.
it was a bad throw from Jameis, but still, it was a great play. The first interception Winston threw, like, man, it was so bad. Like the Chiefs were in cover two, and he just locks on to the post against one safety and completely ignores the existence of the other safety and just throws that post as if there's no safety there. And so Brian Cook just comes around and picks it off. It was very weird. I don't
Yeah.
know what I will say, like the most charitable thing I can say for him there is that the Chiefs rotated to show cover one at the snap and then rotated into cover two, but Winston was doing a play action, so his back was to the defense. I mean, I would hope that he would have noticed that the guy he was looking at wasn't the safety that was the cover one safety when he snapped the ball. But maybe that's just, I don't know. That's the most charitable read is that maybe he thought it was cover one, but like there's another safety there. Like he's there when you're looking at the deep route. He just locked on to the post on the right side. I don't
Yeah.
know. That was odd.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he got benched. But so you had 3 picks of him. Did you pick off Thompson Robinson
Yeah,
as
we
well?
picked him off once, but that was like that was more we were in deep coverage. Justin Reed did a good job of like squeezing the seam route underneath, so the window was really tight and Robinson just overthrew it and Jaden Hicks was sitting back there for what I call a Greg Wesley interception because that's like every Greg Wesley interception was him just standing behind over the top of a route and the ball being overthrown and him catching it.
It's like a Dante Jackson interception, really.
Yeah.
uh, yeah, we've had a couple of those this year. Those are fun, but they're you don't. It's like okay, don't celebrate too much. It wasn't all on you. But, and then I guess they had 2 fumbles, right?
Yeah. One was a punt return fumble that I think was a new returner for them, and the other, Leo Chanel, just
Oh
punched one
yeah.
out from Nick Chubb.
Who he doesn't fumble much, I don't think. So that must have been a strong punch. Um, yeah. Yeah, good. Well, that when they come in bunches, I guess. Sometimes. So that must have been a nice change of pace for you to have actual actual turnovers to do something with. And a couple of them were in the red zone, right?
Or at least, yeah, I think two picks were in the end zone.
Oh, nice.
So that was very nice. They were both on like fairly long throws, though, but they were at least like field goal range. So that was good. I I think even though independently of the turnovers, the defense played well, and I think it was almost a little bit. So I'm cautiously optimistic about the back seven. I think the defensive line played really well, and I think that should be able to translate. I know the Browns line is having a down year, but so is the Texans line. So hopefully that'll continue. But the defense had 5 sacks, and not all of it this time was like crazy blitzes, which is how we had been getting most of our pressure early in the year when we were getting good pressure. This was like Charles Omenihu was winning. Chris Jones was a lot more disciplined. I thought this was his best game of the year. So Chris Jones has a tendency to freelance in the pass rush, and he will like get out of his lane. And oftentimes it's Mike Dana and George Karlaftis kind of like compensating for that. They do a good job of trying to keep the quarterback contained as he freelances. But this time, Chris Jones didn't freelance as much, and he was just kind of staying in his rush lane. And I think it helped everybody get sacks because he was creating pressure, but there wasn't that easy escapability. And Omenihu was winning. Karlaftis was winning late. And so we had 3 guys that were like really consistent threats throughout the game, which was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine some of that probably pressure is what led to some of those picks as well, right? I mean, bad throws and all, the pressure is not going to, that's going to help too, I think. Um, so you were saying the back seven you thought was like, I mean, the defensive line's been, on the upswing in the last 2 games at least. The back seven obviously had a good one this week. Corner
My
wise, how are you feeling? Yeah.
So
Sorry.
my fear is that this may have been an anomaly, and the reason why is that the main way we've been getting exploited in the back seven is through either tight ends or slot receivers running out breaking routes against our safeties and slot corners. Uh, and the guy who comes up a lot is Shamari Connor. And so they had clearly game planned for this because they were putting Jerry Jeudy in the slot a lot. And early in the game, he was having a lot of success. Well, then Shamari Connor got a concussion. And the compensation that we did is we put Trent McDuffie into the slot. And I think their game plan was so slot heavy that then we shut that down. And I don't know that they had like an adjustment to the adjustment. So
Hmm.
the defense started looking really good in the second half when McDuffie went into the slot. But I wonder if that's because they were ready to exploit the slot. And I don't know that they had a second move, a plan B.
Hmm.
Although our boundary corners weren't terrible. I mean, Joshua Williams gets so surprisingly consistently lost in zone that I'm always scared when he's in zone because what he'll do is he'll like identify the right receiver that comes into his zone and just keep carrying him way too far. And then we'll leave like a void behind him instead of like passing that person off and getting back into his zone. And he
Hmm.
does it like, I mean, this is his 3rd year in the league now, and he's still like, it just shows up over and over on film. You're like, where are you going? Like, come back.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but he plays well in man. And then Najee Johnson almost had a pick. He actually played his zone really well. Like he fell underneath a deep route and fortunately didn't catch the pick because it was a 4th down and we would have lost like
Oh, I
20 more
remember that
yards if he
one.
caught
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Um, so the boundary corners didn't, it's not like they played badly, but I don't think they were tested that much because the Browns seemed to have a very slot heavy game plan and they didn't seem to come off of it once our best corner went into the slot.
Hmm. Um, do you know next week what the plan is at corner? I mean, I can't imagine McDuffie's going to stay in the slot for a while.
No, I mean, some would say, and I might agree with them, that that might be the better thing to do is to keep McDuffie in the slot. But I think they're going to put in Chris Roland Wallace in the slot. So that will be an experience. We'll see how that goes.
Okay. All right. Um, yeah. So defensively, the line was good, and the secondary had a nice game. But it's, yeah, unclear whether that was because of the Browns' ineptitude at making changes or not. But I know when you go up 7 points and you have 6 turnovers and 5 sacks, you had a good day, no matter who it's against.
Yeah.
What about what other take homes do you have from this game? Uh, Offense, maybe we haven't talked as much about. So anything on the offense that you wanted to hit?
I think the big thing I would say about the offense is like we just like I know I've been saying this a lot, but like we just have to relax. Like it's not like this offense is very far off. I still feel like it's better than it was last year. Like I have more optimism about things going well in the playoffs than I did at this time last year. The protection is what worries me. Like I think they will need some consistency from the line that they haven't gotten. Um, Trace Smith always seems to have one or two misses in the past game, which is fine. You can get away with that. Uh, they helped Tooney a lot. And I mean, I thought Joe Tooney played a very good game. And Miles Garrett's really good. He's just going to beat you sometimes.
We gave up like 4.5 sacks to him this year, so
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's going to happen. So I'm still optimistic that this is going to come together. And if as long as we just don't get Mahomes further injured, like let's get him healthy and going. And I think my take again, I know people don't like it because when things aren't going the way you want, people want there to be anger, but I'm not that bothered. Like Hollywood Brown's coming back this week. I still feel like DeAndre Hopkins is going to start catching those contested balls. The only thing that to me is like a consistent that I'm not as positive is going to change in the playoffs, but it has every year. So we'll see. Is that Travis Kelce like definitely looks a step slower this year, like even compared to last year, which people were saying was a step back. Like he's just a step slower right now, and I don't. Maybe he has another gear for the playoffs like he did last year, but it is pretty apparent that like he's got like almost no yards after the catch ability now. And I think the reason why that does show up is because we run him on so many underneath routes. With the idea like you just dump it off, and Mahomes isn't throwing it to him anymore. Like he had him on a big third down underneath, and he wasn't gonna because he doesn't believe he's gonna break a tackle, and
Yeah.
and he shouldn't because I don't think he will.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it's like always hard to see when like one of your favorite players is like aging out. But I mean maybe he does have that extra level still. Last year he certainly seemed to have an extra level in the playoffs.
Yeah, I
So
mean, he was outrunning Fred Warner in the Super Bowl.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
if he's able to get back there, like, and like, not that this version of Travis Kelce is like he can be very productive like this. We're just gonna have to tweak the offense a little bit. We
Mm,
can't rely on his yak as much as we are right now.
mm, yeah. Um Good. So, other take. I mean, maybe the only other thing that I wanted to ask about was Butker missing that. It was like a short one, right? A
It
short
was
29
29
yarder or
yards.
something. I mean, this was his first game back, right? After the was it surgery?
Yeah, he had a repair on his meniscus.
Okay, which seems like that. That's important for a kicker. uh, so, any long-term concerns there? I guess is the question.
Yeah, we'll have to see. Like, they're clearly like bringing him along slowly. Like it's not an accident that Justin Reed is still kicking off, and I don't know what I'm pretty sure they're not going to be settling for any like 58-yard field goals right now, which they would have been doing all the time with Butker.
Hmm.
Um, are saying that, and it is true, like they ran the field goal team on very late in the play clock. And so the holder snapper routine, everything was, they weren't able to do what they normally do to set up for the play. And that's what the Chiefs are blaming it on. The snap looked fine, the hold looked fine when I watched it back, but that's what they're saying. And Butker said he's not having any issues, so we'll see. I mean, Butker also historically has been known to miss some dumb kicks, so it could just be his baseline. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah. Only one. I mean, he also made the extra points, right? So that's fine.
Yeah.
Good. I don't think I have any other questions about this one. Um, who was closer in their prediction about it? I think we were very similar, right?
Yeah, I
We
think
were
I
both.
said 23-13 and you said 24-13.
Yeah. All right. So you were closer, I guess, by a point. Um, although if we're going by point separate, like margin of victory, I guess I was closer. Anyway, yeah, yeah. I guess it was the kind of game I mean, I don't think I expected six turnovers, and and 5 sacks and whatnot. But yeah, you were not too too worried. I don't think in this one. I imagine you were not that stressed. Let's put it that way.
No, I mean, I was a little annoyed. I think the thing that was annoying to me and to most Chiefs fans in the second half was how much Mahomes was getting hit. And so that's why I think the injury was so frustrating because it was just like he's getting pummeled back there and we're not being able to prevent that. And now he's hurt. Like,
Yeah, Yeah, that the one he got injured on didn't look fun, right? I mean, he got sort of torqued around there, but and honestly, I was like, I guess his ankle was the thing that hurt the most. But like, it looks like your whole body's got to hurt after that hit.
Yeah.
I don't know, um, but he's, I guess, yeah, unusually flexible. So, um, do you want to predict um, Texans Chiefs while we're on the Chiefs right now?
Sure. I honestly haven't given this that much thought. I think it'll be actually like fairly similar to Chiefs Browns as far as like my outlook going in. Like I didn't expect the Browns offense to be that bad, and I do think the Texans offense is struggling right now, but I don't think they're gonna turn the ball over 6 times. I kind of think it's going to be similar to what I thought the Browns, like that kind of 23, maybe I'll say 23-14, just to be a little different. Like I think
Yeah,
the Texans will move the ball and they'll score a little more, but I do think our defense is kind of hitting a groove now. Nico Collins is back and he looked like one of the best receivers in football before he got hurt. But besides that, the offense doesn't scare me a ton right now. And the defense has a good pass rush, but I think it'll just be another one of those ugly, like, we got to push through this and figure out a way offensively and somehow get to like 23 points ish.
yeah. Do you think Hollywood Brown is going to have much of an impact? It sounds like he will be back, right?
He will be back. I don't think he's going to play more than like 15 or 20 plays. I think he'll have like a big third down catch. I feel like early in the opening script he'll have like one big intermediate catch and we'll all get excited and then we won't see him for 10 plays. But
But that could be like a read idea, right? You want to get them worried about him, paying attention to him, and then don't use him for the rest of the game, essentially.
yeah, like I envision like a 3 catches for 38 yards kind of game.
Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah, I guess I'm in a similar, well, I might predict the Texans to do a bit more on offense, maybe something in like 24-20 Chiefs. I mean, I can't pick against the Chiefs at this point. 13-1 is, a nice record. So regardless of whether they're close or not, they're doing something right enough, frequently enough that yeah, you can't pick against them here. So I think, yeah, I'm going to go 24-20 Chiefs. And I don't know how tense it'll be. I think it might be. I think you'll be like ahead the whole time, but you might be like a little stressed in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I think the reason why I'm giving a little more gap is because we tend to, when we start playing in December and it gets cold in Kansas City, like we start winning these games that are like never look great, but we're never challenged, especially when it's like warm weather or dome teams coming in. Like, so I think that plays into it for me too. It would have been very different for me if we were playing in Houston.
Yeah, yeah. It is an environment that suits you all probably more than it suits the Texans, at least. You're more used to it. Um, we have to take a break in a minute. Do you want to take the break now and then come back and talk Steelers Eagles?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, sounds good.
And we're back. Um, so let's transition to Steelers Eagles. I feel like I have a lot of questions to ask about this game, but starting with just globally, what is your feeling about officiating after that game?
Um, yeah, fair question. I mean, um, I think my calm position on it is essentially what Mike Tomlin said this week, which is that when you play well enough, uh, you give yourself basically the officiating is not an issue, right? Your play can dictate how much the officiating is an issue, and our play here let the officiating be more of an issue than it could have. So that's my position. That's my official position on it, at least. I mean, certainly there are things to be upset about. The two personal fouls against us when there was a scuffle and Darnell Washington was getting punched in the end zone. I mean, there's stuff
That
to complain
was
about.
inexplicable. When have you ever seen that not be offsetting penalties?
That's what even the announcers were baffled by this. They were saying, typically you expect these to be offside. I don't know, and it, that was hard to stomach at the time. um, yeah, Mike Tomlin didn't like it at the time either. You could see you read his lips when he's talking to the ref. That was a fun one. There was another one too that I can't remember at the moment. A call I think later in the game, which I thought was
Well, the one on the punt was the
oh, that's the one. Yes. Yeah. When clearly it had not been punted yet. You could see on the replay it had not been punted yet. But yeah, that wasn't fun.
well, and that was also like reversed after conference because they initially were keeping the ball with Pittsburgh, and
Yeah.
then they talked about it and changed it. And again, like, and so I did a pretty deep dive on like what constitutes like when on a punt do you get a situation where like possession changes versus doesn't change. And besides running into the kicker and roughing the kicker, the general rule of thumb, there isn't actually like a ton of specific verbiage in this, and because I usually go back to the NFL rulebook, but this is a little bit more ambiguous. Um, but the general rule of thumb is like when there are penalties. So the the idea is that like penalties that happen after the kick are supposed to allow for a transfer of possession in order to make it like a little more fair, right? You can't have like
Yeah.
every penalty just affect when a team's intending to punt the ball. But usually penalties that occur during the rush are not considered to be part of that. It's penalties that are due to the actual like return. Those kind
Like
of
blocks in the back
fall
or
into
whatnot.
that. Right, blocks in the back or holding. I mean, this was clearly a penalty during the rush. It was a penalty, and the one thing I was trying to find is like, do they say that like possession changes when the ball is dropped for the punt, like when it leaves the punter hand? But it seems most consistent that possession is considered to have changed when the ball crosses the extended neutral zone, not even when it's kicked. So
Yeah.
like this was well before that. I don't know. And it is really weird to me that I have not been able to find like where is Dean Blandino, where is Gene Steratore. Like I've not heard a single explanation of this from anybody, which is weird. Like most of these guys like get on Twitter and post a thing.
Yeah.
Like I have seen nothing as far as analysis of this play, which is very strange to me because it's one of the few that like it's very hard to get a concrete idea from the book, and none of the officials are coming out and being like, "Oh, this is why this happened."
Maybe this
I
was
don't
like an area
understand.
where they're not really sure what the
Yeah,
rule book is supposed to say,
that's
right?
what it
Like,
seems like. I don't think anybody
yeah,
has any idea. Otherwise, someone would have said
yeah,
something, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's cool in itself, right? That we found like a vague part, an unspecified part of the rule book. For some reason, the philosopher in me likes that, but the football fan in me does not like how it played out for us. um, yeah, well, I mean, look, I said like, big picture here. I still think like the this is a tough game to for me to like get a I think get a read on it, but maybe not as tough or not in the same ways that other games this year have been tough. I think like we're asking questions about the officiating, which is like playing into like the idea that really what made the difference in this game were particular plays, particular like it's the narrative of how the game played out, right? And there's a read of this game where that's exactly it, right? We were coming back, we had we were right outside the red zone in the third quarter, down seven, and then we get the Najee Harris fumble, and that turns everything. There's a reading of this game where that's exactly it, right? This was, I think when you find yourself pushing a narrative view of a game like this, that is indicative that the teams are fairly evenly matched, or at least that they are, you know, competitive against one another, and that crucial small things on a particular play are going to make a big difference to the outcome. And there's like as unbalanced as the stats were in this one, which they were ridiculously bad for us. I do feel like this was more of a narrative game than you would have expected from glancing at those stats. This wasn't a game where we just got like completely outclassed from start to finish. So in some sense, like I felt fine coming out of this. To be honest, I kind of thought we would get more manhandled than we did. There's a particular sort of read on I think what happened there, and honestly, if we played them again and were a bit healthier, I would be not optimistic maybe, but I wouldn't be expecting the same result. Um, that's my high level view of this one.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the two gripes that one can have with the Steelers are one, the offensive performance in the first, chunk of that game. I think that
Yeah,
that really set everything back and made it difficult. Really, once you went down 17-3, the offense was fine. Like
yeah,
they,
it was.
yeah,
Which is surprised. Like they, I think we got in our own heads and we thought Pickens is out. We got to run it against these guys, and that wasn't working. And it hasn't really worked as the like default option all year, right? It's not like we can really just rely on the run game to open up the passing game. Usually, it's been the reverse. And I think once we realized, okay, we have to pass it, we were moving it all right. I don't think it was really the offense's problem at that point. I mean, they fumbled later, and that was their problem.
and there
But
was
yeah, I
such an
agree.
unforced error fumble too. Like there's some plays that just hit you harder than I like. When he dropped that ball, I was like, "Are you kidding me?" Like,
Yeah.
what? Like, how? What? It was like the same, well, more even than Joey Porter's diving pass interference against the Bengals. Like, it was just like, how is that? Like, what? Like, this is the way to lose the ball? Like,
Yeah.
unforced error entirely. That was tough.
And I mean, it's hard to know. I mean, so I don't know. They had already held the ball the Eagles had already held the ball for a while at that point. And, I was kind of thinking like if we can score here, this is anyone's game. But the defense is kind of tired already, right? So that was already kind of a worry in the back of my head. Um, but after that, they had a long drive for a touchdown, put them up two touchdowns in the early fourth quarter, and then we're coming back, and I think we punted. That was a bad decision, probably to punt around
Yeah.
midfield, and then we
I
never
would
saw
not
the
have
ball
punted it.
again. We
Yeah.
had two possessions in the second half, which I don't think I can remember a time when we had two possessions and a half before. But and they weren't even
Yeah.
like bad possessions. We moved the ball in both of them.
Well, the first one was derailed by the fumble, and the second one was derailed by that Zach Frazier tripping penalty. That like
Oh yeah,
because otherwise that one was moving too. Like we were
yeah,
about to have like second and four or something, and Zach Frazier. I mean, you can see it. It just an instinct, right? Like you dive and miss when you're trying to block a linebacker, and then as he comes around, like you can tell it was like what when you like instinctively do something and then you realize you shouldn't do that. Like that's what he just
yeah,
like lifted the leg and he tripped, and then he's like, like it's like
yeah,
yeah, that's a tough one.
yeah. That is a tough one. But I mean, so I mean, even still, I thought the defense put up an admirable effort. They like almost got a couple stops, and the Eagles just kept converting on third or fourth and short. I think they might have had a fourth and short conversion on that last like 10-minute drive or whatever that they had. Um, but that was like a 97 or something yard drive. Uh, and we just couldn't get a stop. And there were opportunities. I feel like those were winnable third downs, and we just didn't win a
Well,
couple crucial ones.
and there was some winnable, like there was a 2nd and 20 that got converted.
Yeah,
Like the one thing I would say that was a little disheartening was like the Steelers are like a bread and butter cover three zone team, and the Eagles were able to kind of like sit underneath, get like little gaps in the zone, and then the rally to tackle wasn't there today and during that
no,
game. Like
we missed some tackles that we
that
normally make.
was, yeah, like if the tackling is better and the spacing is a little better, closing in on those underneath routes, like this is a completely different game. But unfortunately, on those crucial plays, the Steelers defense wasn't able to make it hard enough. Like Devontae Smith could just kind of sit at 10 yards and then get 12 yards after the catch. Like you just can't do that.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how much to attribute that. I mean, Dante Jackson got hurt, and I've been not that impressed with him most of the year, but he does have a very low catch percentage allowed. I think it's in the top 10 in the league. Um, so so him getting replaced by James Pierre probably hurt. We can't. I think Joey Porter Jr. was fairly fine in coverage. He did give up some third down conversions on a couple of those drives, but he was in fairly good position. And AJ Brown is AJ Brown. Um,
Yeah.
but James Pierre being our second corner at that point was tough to overcome, I think. And also Deshaun Elliott was out, who's I haven't talked enough about. He's been really, really good this year, and having him not in there, I think was big. So that's why I say again, if we played them healthier, um, especially healthier in the secondary, I feel like it would be interesting to see how that game goes. But
Yeah,
and
because I
I'm
don't.
not even like blaming Pickens' absence. I think like the offense was okay once they decided to pass it.
Yeah.
He certainly would have helped, but you know,
Yeah, if maybe he would have helped them get a faster start, that's the only gripe with the offense. I mean,
mm,
because even then, like after because the defense, we should give them credit too for the early fumbles forced. Well, at least for one of them, but the other one was special teams. But that if not for that Darnell Washington penalty, like then that's also like the ball's at the 4 yard line or something, right?
yeah,
With a second and
yeah,
goal, like that penalty ruined a great chance at a touchdown. The Zach Frazier penalty set behind the sticks for a chance at a touchdown, and then the Najee Harris fumble. And then on top of all that, like I still am adamant that Tomlin should not have punted that ball. Like I don't know why you're
yeah,
punting there, but even then, after the punt, like you should have got the ball back anyway. Like so, with that penalty. So when you have like four plays like that are just so impactful that you don't know the butterfly effect of those. It's hard to be like two down on a performance when
yeah.
all
I
the key things went
agree.
against you. You know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and the Eagles were good, right? They came to play in a way that I feel like their offense had not come to play for. I mean, at least a passing game, right? They were there. They showed up. We did shut down Barkley pretty well, I think. He had like 60 some
Yeah,
yards,
yeah,
um,
yeah. If you told me going
which
into
was
that game
nice.
that Barkley would have 60 something yards, I'd be like, oh, this is good.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. What's kind of rough now is that like that was winnable, I think. I mean, they could change those plays and like maybe other things happen in a way that doesn't go well for us. But it did feel like that hinged on a couple plays that maybe more than a couple, but like it was winnable, and I think we could have made it interesting if things had gone slightly differently. Uh, but now it's tough, right? Now we got to play the Ravens in a short week. Uh, we probably have TJ Watt. It sounds like he's going to play.
Oh, he
So
is.
that
Oh,
injury,
okay.
which looked bad, like it looked like it was almost non-contact. I mean, I think he was engaged when it happened, but it looked like it was like an Achilles or something. But
Yeah.
there's a low ankle sprain, and he says it's been pretty good this week, so he's going to give it a go on Saturday. Um, but I think Deshaun Elliott's still going to be out. Pickens is still going to be out. Dante Jackson
Oh,
is questionable, so that's going to be tough to win in Baltimore after we already beat them, and they're probably mad because they feel like they should have won that one. So we get Baltimore, and then we get Kansas City 4 days later. We need one win. If we beat Baltimore, we win the North, and then I feel like you just like I don't know if I think you rest up at that point. I don't even like. Is it worth jockeying for the 3 versus the 4? I'm not really sure at that point. So I think you put everything into winning this game, and then you see what you can see how that goes. But this game it's going to be hard without a lot of crucial pieces.
yeah, that's tough. I also wonder if they hold Elliott and uh, Pickens out partially because it's like your next game's in 4 days. Like you'll at least be ready
Mm,
for that one, and then you'll have rest after that. Like
yeah,
having people come off of injury to play 2 games in 4 game days is kind of rough.
yeah, that's true. I don't. I think the word on the street is that Pickens might not be back until the last game.
Oh,
Um,
really?
but I mean, that was the original rumor, and there were videos of him practicing this week, even though he was listed as not practicing. So I don't know what to. I mean, it's a hamstring, and those are like hard to predict, I think, right? So,
Yeah.
he could feel fine, and then we're just being cautious with him because we don't want it to be an issue in the playoffs. But it would be nice to be a little bit more secure. I mean, there's another attitude here where it's just like, we're in the playoffs at this point, just like rest everyone for the next 3 weeks and just prepare for it. But I think you want home field, right? At least in the first round.
Especially at Heinz Field or Acrisure
Acrisure.
Stadium.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think so.
I
Given
mean,
the
that's
just the kicking
tough.
advantage that we have there, right? Like
Kicking, yeah.
even that alone.
Well, and there is something, I mean, I know there have been some bad results, like the Browns playoff game, but like there's something about like the aura atmosphere, like of going into Pittsburgh, and I don't think anyone would be thrilled, even with the Chiefs as they are. Like I would not be looking forward to a night game in the cold in Pittsburgh. That's not something anyone wants to do. So
Yeah. Uh, well, you don't have a night game at least. You have an early day game on Christmas. But honestly, like yeah, like I'm not optimistic about this Ravens game with our injury status and Chiefs. Like you can't be optimistic about the Chiefs game on Christmas. So like, we got to pull something out of a hat here, which like we'll see if we can do it. We have been surprising this year in our ability to pull things out of hats. So uh, maybe something good will happen. But no. It does feel like this Eagles game was better than expected, but the result was about as bad as expected anyway. And now we have to deal with the consequences. So um, yeah, it's gonna be a fun end of the season here.
yeah, it's a brutal stretch, but
It's a
it's
gauntlet,
as
as
we
they say.
expected. A gauntlet, yeah. Do you want
Um,
to predict Steelers Ravens?
yeah, let's do it. I just heard that I couldn't see who it was. The Ravens have one of their top receivers, either
Bateman.
sick
Bateman's
or
in a
Bateman
boot,
might be out.
apparently. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that might be helpful. Of course, we're coming to play Lamar after has this amazing game last week, right? Like, I mean, he's always good, but um, maybe that's a good time to play him when they're like riding high. Uh, it's hard to see us winning this. As much as it would be really nice to win the AFC North in Baltimore. Oh man, I mean, last time we played them, I said coming out of that, I do not think we were the better team. We just somehow squeaked by and have their number. I think this is another. I mean, I'm finally on board with this being like a close nail biter, old school. But but I still. I mean, part of me wants to say that the Ravens just run away with this. They turn it into a track meet and we can't keep up. But I don't know. I think it's like uh, 20 to 16 Baltimore. I don't know how we get to 16, but yeah, I think that's what's gonna happen.
That's it's funny because had I've been like sticking to my guns as far as I felt like the Steelers were going to go 11-6, and I thought it was going to be a loss this game, loss against the Chiefs, and then a win against the Bengals. But I can't help myself. This is what the Steelers do. They go and then they steal things from Baltimore. Like that's what they've done my whole life. Like that's what they do. They just like get these crucial moments. It's like Ben Roethlisberger's last game. Like I didn't think they were gonna win that
Mm.
one. Like they find a way, and I think they're gonna find a way again, and they're gonna win the North. Like I really, it just seems too perfect that like Sunday night we're talking about the Steelers winning the North. I don't know it. I know this is going against my prediction, but I did have a whole rant earlier in the offseason about how you shouldn't just stick with your old prediction. You should do what you feel now.
You
And I
have
feel
new
like the
data
Steelers
now.
are going to
Yeah,
win. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm going to say 17-14 Steelers. I think they figured that I'd like this. Like, I just can't bet against that. Like, that this is just what they do. This is what Tomlin does. He gets them up for these important games. They're like, what, 5-1 against Lamar Jackson or something like that? Like,
Yeah.
I feel like this is going to be another one. The Steelers win the North.
Oh, well, I would be. very happy because then we can sort of just cruise, and it doesn't matter that we're going to lose to the Chiefs on Christmas. Um,
That would help us.
yeah,
Yeah, that would be great.
yeah, that's right. Uh, yeah, I mean that'd be wonderful. I don't. I guess I could see it because I think it'll be close, but I don't know. Just with our injuries right now, it's gonna be interesting. Interesting in a bad way. But okay. Well, there you have our predictions. We were pretty good on, I think, both games last week. I think we both saw the. I mean, we both saw the Steelers losing to the Eagles. I honestly felt like it would be worse than it was, but
I think the
yeah.
only thing that surprised me about that game, actually, two, I thought both offenses surprised me. I thought both offenses would have been worse. I mean, the Steelers scored as many points as I said they would, 13, but I think you said 13 also. But that was not a 13-point performance from the Steelers offense. That was the worst case scenario. They ended up with 13 points. Like, that was like a
Yeah.
20, 24-point performance at least, you know? I'm surprised that the Eagles moved the ball as well. It was that like I just feel like the Steelers had like they had a bad tackling, bad spacing day. They're usually a
Hmm.
lot better with that underneath stuff. For whatever reason, that wasn't the day.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. Hopefully it wasn't a. I mean, hopefully there wasn't something else going on there that we didn't pick up on, and teams can now exploit against us. But it did feel like a better game than it looked on paper. We had we had 41 offensive plays in that game. Like that, that is just so few. um, but yeah, sometimes that happens, I guess. Um, well, should we look around the league a bit at other things? I guess you got Chargers and Broncos tonight, right?
Yeah, Chargers Broncos tonight. I'm gonna do my best to stay awake for some of that game. We'll see.
You've
Like
been
this.
how many hours straight have you been awake?
Well, I did get. I've got approximately 3 hours of sleep last night, so it's not at all. But I've been running like an average. This week has been a pretty rough week. I don't know if like people have noticed, but I kind of went a little too crazy on the Chiefs film review. I put out literally 3 hours and 7 minutes of content. So like you can imagine how long it took me to record all that. So I haven't been sleeping a lot this week.
Well,
Yeah,
well,
so
people better be watching this stuff because look at this. Like, Jay is depriving himself of probably like how for each hour you record, how many hours for each hour you produce, how many hours would you say you are spending on it?
um
Is this gonna be too depressing to think about?
yeah, I mean, it took like the actual recording part of the Chiefs, and it's not like I was like really efficient, but I would say I spent like 8 hours recording the 3 hour Chiefs thing, and then I spent another like half hour to an hour like prepping. So maybe like between 8 and 9 hours for the all the Chiefs film review. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope people are watching the content because that's that is dedication. You have to appreciate what's going on behind the scenes here on Jay's end. Um, Looking around the league, I guess. Bef Still on last week.
Well, I feel
Um,
like we got to start with Falcons Raiders just because the Falcons bench Kirk Cousins.
yeah,
Like,
that
what do you make about what's going on?
I mean, it's it's surprise. I mean, I've heard people talking about it still being, from his injury, but but he had some good games earlier this year. Like it looked like he had it figured out. So it's hard to get that narrative to make sense to me. I don't know what does make sense, but not that one. And it'll be interesting to see Penix in action, and see whether that pick pans out for them. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have any insight into like why he's struggling now because he had like a 500-yard game earlier this season, I think, and
Yeah,
against
he.
the Eagles, was it? I don't remember.
I thought it was the Bucks.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, he had like a
Yeah.
500-yard game. I think in one of the Bucks games, the other Bucks game, he threw for 4 touchdowns, something like that. Yeah, In fact, I almost want to say he had two 500-yard games this year, but maybe the other one was, it wasn't what was, I don't know. I could be making stuff up at this point. I don't know. But he wasn't playing terribly. Now, he didn't have like consistently all good games, but he was playing better than he is now. I don't know. The funniest thing to me is like people trying to like this is a spin that this is going to be like a good thing for the Falcons in the sense that it's like, well, and then if they trade him, then they only have a $29 million cap hit. It's like, who wants what? Who's going to be like, yeah, let's sign up for this? Like,
Yeah.
you had to bench him in the middle of a season where you're making a playoff push. Like, like I don't know. I don't what would be a team like if you were going to speculate who would want Kirk Cousins next year? I can't. Who would want him?
Uh,
Especially to have to trade for him and then pay whatever is left on his contract.
yeah. Who would do that? I mean, if Aaron Rodgers retires, maybe the Jets are in the market, and they'll do it. Like go with another really old quarterback with a recent serious injury. I mean, I don't know.
Same injury, right?
Yeah, right. The same injury. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I mean, I don't think you might like maybe the Patriots, but I think Patriots fans are pretty in on Drake May right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Like most of the teams that like the Jets, if they know what's good for them, are gonna go try to go young at quarterback. The Patriots already have their quarterback. Who is a team that can convince themselves they're a quarterback away? Like I feel like there's a world. I don't think this would actually happen, but there is a world in which Kyle Shanahan is like, hey, maybe I don't want to pay Brock Purdy, and I get
yeah,
like a slightly cheaper guy that, because like Kevin O'Connell, Kyle Shanahan, like I'm sure he could run an offense that, the problem is it seems like Kirk Cousins can't move. Like he's not taking dropbacks from under center
yeah.
anymore. He's not doing play action like he did before. So that wouldn't really work for Kyle Shanahan. But it feels like something like that. Or like if Miami is just like Tua is holding us back. Like,
I can't see that. I mean, maybe they're. This is this is the worst things have gone for them in a little while. So maybe they'll rethink things after the season. I don't know.
but I can't, like, nothing is something I would actually be like, yes, this makes sense. Like, to me, the Miami and San Francisco are like the closest things to something that, like, in a crazy world I could see happening, but not realistically. Like, unless
Yeah,
someone's quarterback has like a devastating injury, or it comes out that like Dak Prescott is not going to be able to play at all next year, and then it's like, well, maybe they get Kirk Cousins or something. But
but you need a
otherwise, I
team
don't
with
see
like
it.
yeah, like good weapons and a solid defense. That's just like because this is going to be. I mean, how old is Kirk Cousins now? And he can't really move.
It's like
um,
36 or something, I think.
okay, yeah. I mean, you can't be optimistic about this being a long-term solution, right? So you need to have a lot of pieces in place and think we just need a competent quarterback, basically, behind a good line. To yeah, a lot has to be set up for that, and I don't know who is set up for that, but
And the other thing to me is like, please, those people that are making it like, see, the Falcons were smart to get Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix. It's like, no, no, like this just shows that it was stupid to sign Kirk Cousins. Like, if your thought was you wanted a young quarterback and draft, like, why did you pay Kirk Cousins this money? Like,
yeah,
I feel like I understand with taking multiple swings, but you can't do multiple high resource swings. Like that's just redundancy that you can't afford in the salary cap era. Like you have to be able to utilize your resources properly. Take multiple low leverage swings and hope one of them pans out and you get a huge, what's the term I'm looking for? A huge
ROI, return on
yeah,
investment.
exactly.
Yes,
Like that makes sense, but your high leverage swings, like you have to actually really think about those. You can't the
yeah.
high resource swings, you can't be taking multiple. We don't there aren't enough resources.
They are positioning someone else to take a good low resource swing on Kirk
Yeah.
Cousins, but I still don't know who's going to do it, right? Um, yeah. Uh,
I
do you have insight? Go ahead, sorry.
I was just gonna say the next one I would like I was surprised by the Packers Seahawks game. I thought that was gonna
Oh,
be like a really tight game and I kind of felt pretty good about the Seahawks' chance. I mean, I don't know. I could have seen it go either way, but I didn't think it was going to be like a domination by the
Yeah.
Packers. That was weird.
Yeah. I didn't watch it, so I don't know if it was as dominant as the score looked. But I also wanted to ask about the Chargers Bucks game because that looked interesting based on the score. Do you have insight into what happened there?
My thought, I don't have any insight into what happened to the defense. Like the defense in the second half just fell apart, and I'm not really sure why. Herbert doesn't look right. Like I think the injury he suffered against the Chiefs is lingering. It was my read. Like he just didn't look good, and the Chargers can't run the ball without J.K. Dobbins like they were before. Like it's just Gus Edwards isn't the answer. Uh, I think that is going to be an issue. And I'm surprised that more people aren't talking about, Jim Harbaugh, the darling, is now what, last like 3 of 4? And
Mhm.
things are really, I mean, if they lose tonight, which even I am not willing to pick Bo Nix over Jim Harbaugh and Herbert. Like, I would still pick the Chargers, but if they lose tonight, like this, it's a really rough stretch for them. I don't
Are
know.
they
The
in
wheels are kind of coming off.
Denver? Is it? I don't
I
remember
think they
who
are in
is
Denver.
hosting. I
No, they're in
I
LA.
might. Oh, okay, okay.
They're in
Well,
LA.
even then, like no one in LA cares about the Chargers anyway. uh, but I kind of would have, if it were in Denver, I would have thought, yeah, the Broncos can definitely take them. Well, it does feel like right now the Broncos are definitely the better team. So, um, who knows?
Yeah, at least their defense has been great, and the Chargers has too, but not against Baker Mayfield for whatever reason. That is the part of this game I don't know what to make anything about. Like the the Panthers, the Bucks have like played very well against certain teams. Like and their offense has just like exploded. And I mean that Chargers defense is no joke. Like we just played them. They're
Yeah,
solid. So I
yeah,
don't know what happened.
yeah. Uh, it's Baker Mayfield. That's what happened. I guess I don't know. That's my guess. Um, we should mention Bills Lions because that looked exciting. I watched a little bit of it, but
Oh,
man,
man. I mean, at least we have to talk about the decision to onside kick down 10 with like 12 minutes to go in the game.
yeah.
That was one
Uh,
of like
what
I
do you
mean
make of it?
I think it's extremely stupid. Like I think in general like I was someone who was on board with a lot of the advancement and going for it on fourth down, and I wish Andy Reid would do that more. I think Dan Campbell is stupid with it though. Not just on this
Mhm.
play. Like Dan Campbell runs fake punts in his at his own 30-yard line. Like he does a lot of high leverage stuff that is going to come back to bite him. And I think he doesn't get criticized for it because people like him and
Mhm.
because people like his aggressive. They like the Lions. It's a great story. They like Dan Campbell, but like we saw this with Brendan Staley. Remember, he was doing a lot of
Yep,
aggressive stuff and
yep.
it was working early on, and then like he's out of a job now. So
But it wasn't working. Also, I felt like actually, honestly, for early on for him, I thought he was doing the right thing, and it was just like not working so routinely that like I felt bad for him. It was like, oh, this should be working better for you, and he kept getting so much flack. But then by the end of it, he was just I think making terrible decisions.
yeah,
Um,
well, I thought Brendan Staley first was making aggressive decisions and it was working. Then it stopped working, and then he just forgot how to coach. So
yeah,
it was like stages.
yeah, okay, that's fair. I remember at one point him addressing a question about this, saying like the people who know what's going on agree that this was the right decision or something like that, something to that effect. And I was like, that's not going to play well with
Yeah,
anybody because it didn't turn out well.
but
Um,
the onside kick, like even from an analytics standpoint, right? Like what is the conversion rate of onside kicks now that they're being announced? It's something like 6% or something. So
yeah,
basically,
is
you're
there? But
saying
that
that
like we don't even have good data on that, and like
right.
how many have been attempted in the first place.
Well, but it's not like the conversion rate was that high even
Yeah,
before. Like,
yeah, yeah,
so like let's be generous and give it like 15%, which is ridiculously high. Like there's no way it's
right,
even close to that. So
right,
basically
yeah,
you're saying that you're willing to take a 15% that the probability of you punting the ball back to the Bills or kicking off to the Bills with them up 10 the probability of you losing is more than 85%. Like, I don't know that I would, and certainly not more than 94%. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me, even from a probability. Like, you're taking such, like, it's the problem of the gambler, right? You get used to taking risks, and you just like, oh, I can do this. It's like, why do you think you could do this?
That risk is the dumb risk. Yeah, that's right. Um, yeah. But the other annoying feature of this game is that it's going to maybe not cement, but almost cement Josh Allen for MVP. I think that
Yeah,
narrative has been pushed so hard, and um, winning this game is certainly going to help that. But
yeah.
whatever. I guess we'll have to live with that.
I I wouldn't mind, knock on wood, but beating another MVP in the playoffs. That would be fun.
Yeah.
All right.
Um, yeah. Good. We got to go in just a minute here. Anything else to say by way of wrapping up?
No, I feel like we can wrap it up there. We will. Chiefs and Steelers are going to play on the same day. It's just not going to be on Sunday.
Yeah.
So will try to be active on Twitter after the Chiefs and Steelers games, and then I'll try to have the Chiefs film review up Sunday night. Hopefully, it won't be 3 hours long. I have to like calm myself down and actually like limit the number of plays I put in, and then I'll try to get the Steelers film review up Monday night.
Well, it sounds good. Hopefully, the films are actually fun to review as opposed
Yeah,
to. Well, I guess these were probably fun for different reasons, but yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, stay safe, everyone. Stay warm. It's not warm here, but yeah, we'll be back next week with more.
Until next time.